July 11th, 2026. Well, it looks like I was pretty well right that Plattner's gone, and in fact, it's now been made official. He's actually finally sent in the letter. He didn't wait to Monday, so he's out, and we'll see. The Democrats will be trying to pick, of course, a suitable replacement. Um, on the other, how that bodes for that one Senate race, we don't know, but that's an issue to consider. I think the other issue is, of course, Senator Mitch McConnell apparently has had some kind of a heart attack. Apparently, that's what the rumor I've heard, and apparently he's recovering right now. But apparently he's not been in good enough shape to return to the Senate, which probably doesn't need to unless it's a big vote, and maybe they can take him in on a gurney if he's still alive. Now if he dies, then we have a situation where it will take it at least a month, if not more, to get a replacement. And of course, that'd be a special election right before the main election, which could lead to a kind of a bad outcome, I think. So at any rate, that's what we apparently that's what I hear is likely to be the case if he survives. At least until election day, then that won't be a problem, of course. But remember, that has a lot to do with being able to get any kind of legislation passed, right? It was such a narrow situation, and a few dissidents in the Republican Party, including at least two individuals that are really ticked off because Trump tried to get him defeated, and he did. So, or at least they think it's what happened. And so, but of course, the big event, of course, of the week was the NATO Summit, and of course the end of the ceasefire with Iran. That's kind of the two big things, or you can put them in the other order as well, whichever you prefer. And so that's what I guess we'll be getting into here. As far as the ceasefire with Iran, it looks like that while certain bombing actions have increased, it's nothing like the intensity of the Epic Fury raids. So more like kind of attacking the forces that the Iranians have that are trying to directly interdict shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. So that's kind of the way we are. Apparently, the situation is on this thing. It's hard to get a handle on it, but I think I finally have. What happened is we negotiated a bad deal. And of course, that puts Vice President Vance kind of in the hot seat, doesn't it? Because he was the one that was there negotiating it primarily, and apparently the deal we negotiated, apparently the fine print didn't say what we interpreted it as meaning. Apparently, it said that basically that the Iranians can, and I guess it can set up a pathway through, and if you follow the path that they say, you're okay, and if you register with them and get their approval, you can go through. But if you don't, they'll attack you. And that wasn't the way it was sold, not the way I interpreted it. I thought it was 60 days you'd have passage, and then they might impose their quota system or whatever. But apparently that's not what was actually signed, and of course that's why it blew up. And now we're demanding we were saying that deal's off. And we're now demanding free passage, or else I guess military action will occur. So, at any rate, I've already explained in the previous video what I thought ought to be done in order to get passage through, in the sense that that we need to have a fund to basically insure the tankers, so that those that get damaged or destroyed, the fund will pay for it. And otherwise, we run the thing. We use our forces the best we can to put suppressive fire on the Iranian side, to prevent them from doing much interdicting. That's my thought. I don't know if it would work or not, but if you're going to do that, it seems like that would be the way to go. But they're not going to go unless the owners of these tankers realize if they lose their tanker, we'll pay for the damage or pay for it. And I'm assuming with this that there won't be that many that will actually be lost. But if I'm wrong about that, the bill could get pretty high. But that's one way of looking at this. And of course, the other issue is how much support we have from the necessary Arab partners that we're dealing with here, because they're the ones that are going to get the retaliatory strikes, of course. And that's, where we are on that. So if you like these videos, please subscribe, give me a like, and of course, or you can follow me on the Rumble, which I post there as well. Yeah, this is you know uh, so that's basically that aspect of it. We'll just have to see what develops next. I mean, it looks like Trump has been making all kind of wild statements on this. On the other side of the coin, which coming out of the NATO summit, apparently Trump was more or less pleased, I guess, seemed to be pleased now with NATO's commitment to building more, putting more into military investments, except, of course, for Spain. Of course, I mean, who's going to attack Spain? I mean, why would anybody attack Spain? If you look how far it is from anybody that might attack them, I don't know who would do it. So that's probably why they have a sort of a nonchalant attitude about their commitment, right? And they don't really want to provide troops to fight in Ukraine or in Poland or something. So you can see their attitude, that's kind of where they are. But that's really ticked Trump off. I don't know if anything's going to happen with it, but that's what happened. And the other thing seems to be is that Trump is kind of since Vance is kind of, if you look at the two polls there, the Rubio side of the administration and the Vance side of the administration, it looks like that Trump is now tilted toward the Rubio side, it looks to me like. And so that indicates sort of a green light to have Ukraine go off and do all kind of wild attacks on Russia. And I guess their new Flamingo missile apparently has a pretty good range. They were able to hit a target 1,700 miles into Russia. And some people claim I just read something that claimed the range was a little bit longer, so I don't know about that. Apparently this target wasn't very well defended, perhaps because another target very nearby was where the defenses were put, maybe. But if they take that one out, of course, that's going to have some real impact on the war. And I think people are taking a big risk here. We'll just have to see what happens. But I think if Russia really finds itself losing in terms of the conventional war, in terms of this, let's say this this drone war, this missile war, not the ground war. They're winning the ground war slowly but surely. But if their system becomes destabilized, as I pointed out, the nuclear option is on the table, I think. And what that would turn into, I don't know. And what would we do about it if they did? I mean, we've all claimed that nuclear wars are unwinnable. And so if somebody starts using nuclear weapons on a country that can't retaliate with nuclear weapons, what do we actually do about it? I mean, extended deterrence has always been a strategic concept, but does it actually extend to Ukraine? And so I don't know. On the other hand, it looks like for the moment, it looks like Russia is now relying on Belarus and China to get refined petroleum products. So if the thing stays limited and doesn't spin out of control, which I guess is what we're all hoping for here, since I'm about 5 miles from a likely target, if it does go full scale, and anyway. All I can say is that the conventional aspects of it. I mean, apparently Ukraine right now is down to. I've heard that the Poles gave them 5 PAC-3 missiles for their missile defense for Kyiv, which by the way doesn't have necessarily a high probability of intercept against a Iskander either. The Iskander missiles will maneuver in flight, and so I don't know what's it have, 25% probability of PK, 50 maybe, I don't know, 25, only 5 missiles. I mean, and by the way, that means they got to bring their radar sets out in order to launch those 5 missiles, and of course that's the real target for the Iskanders, to kill the control system and the radar. Those are far more expensive than intercept missiles and much more valuable. So anyway, but that's the Ukrainian approach has been to go after the Russian oil refineries and other targets of that sort. The Russian approach, interesting enough, has been going after the gasoline stations one by one. And think about it. A gasoline station, what kind of defense are you going to put around an isolated gasoline station along a highway? I mean, they're spread out over the place. I understand at the beginning of the conflict, Ukraine-wide, there were like 6,000 gasoline stations, and I presume that includes ones that can provide diesel as well in many cases. But throughout the country, and of course some of them are behind Russian occupied areas, and some are way over in western Ukraine, right? But the ones that are in the areas where the battles are really being waged and where the logistics to bring drones to the front and which bring weapons and artillery shells and troops and everything, those areas they've been systematically attacking with drones and knocking them out. Some are close enough to apparently even FPV short-range drones, probably the fiber optic types, and others are being hit with the normal, mini airplane type drones. And it looks like hundreds of these things have been destroyed in the past few weeks, and it's an ongoing process. And if they, of course, militaries can use trucks to bring to provide, fuel to the front line, and that's often the way it's done in an advancing army. But they're also going after trucks, truck farms, and the places where the trucks would fuel up, of course. So that's been their counter strategy. Crimea is in pretty bad shape as far as fuel for the local residents, and they're pretty much, I guess, limited to getting almost nothing. The Ukrainians have attacked a whole bunch of tankers that are locked in the Azov Sea, I guess because of the sea drones that are out there that kind of blocked them in there. And again, the Russians, after all these years, haven't come up with the idea of a lot of fast patrol boats to go after the sea drones, but they haven't done that. So sometimes they're not the smartest. But anyway, whatever. So you're left with a situation here that I've read an article today by a author who apparently was kind of an expert that followed the fall of the Soviet Union, and his opinion is economically that the situation even now is not near as dire as it was when the Soviet Union actually went kaput. So, and we don't know how much support the Chinese will eventually provide here too. If they see Russia going under, of course, they will be finding themselves all alone in the world, right? So they might at some point decide they need to intercede too. We don't know if they would or wouldn't. It's hard to know. But that's kind of the situation I'm looking at here. And so, like I said, but the possibility of this thing going nuclear, I think, and I'm thinking more or less the use of one or two bombs, not a lot. I simply think the use of even one bomb will shatter the world consciousness a little bit. Nobody's used one since Nagasaki. And I think nobody's expecting it to really happen. I mean, I'm not saying nobody, but the people that are making these decisions, I don't think are thinking it's going to happen. But what do they do if it does? And so, anyway, let's hope it doesn't, I guess. As I said, my goose will be cooked, I suppose. But if it goes full scale, anyhow, I don't know. I mean, I think that in reality, it might actually sober us all up about the situation and be willing to make a little bit more negotiated positions. On the other hand, maybe I'm being too. The question is, how desperate the other side is. That's always the question you have to face. And if they're not desperate, they'll probably just continue doing what they're doing. Like I said, the ground war. I mean, in the Zaporizhia area, near the dried up river, the Ukrainians have made some advances. Elsewise, I think the Russians are pretty much advancing with some Ukrainian counterattacks that come from time to time. A lot of these are kind of raids, more or less. The front is kind of porous. It isn't really, for the most part, it's a trench line, because if you're in a trench, you're dead. The drone comes over and drops a bomb in it. So what you can do, you can send a force in and, put your flag up on some building or something, but how long do you really last there, and vice versa. So that's kind of what's happening there. But overall, I mean, they've but it's a slow process, and I guess the question is the strategic aspect of it and all that. So that's what I've got on that. And I don't know, as far as the idea of Ukraine building Patriot missiles, the problem there is that we're talking about basically assembly, I think. The actual components, that is, the detailed components, the radar sets and the guidance systems and all that are all subcontracted out, and that's what's slowing up our own production, is getting that ramped up enough. So that's probably not going to be an immediate thing. So I don't know. So we'll have to just see how that develops. On other topics, I guess the politics as a whole, we have our Democrat socialists, as they're called, neo-Marxists, I think I would tend to call them. Trump calls them communists, although whether that's the best propaganda tactic. However, when you look at they just put out an agenda, and a lot of their agenda is essentially they can't accomplish it. I mean, for instance, they want to eliminate the Senate. Well, they can't eliminate the Senate. Why? Because that would take a constitutional amendment. And what does the constitutional amendment take? Well, for instance, 2/3 of both houses and 3/4 of the state legislatures ratifying it. No way in heck the states are going to ratify a thing that eliminates the Senate. Even the Democrats' small states might balk at that, since they would almost have no influence anymore, right? And the conservative states would probably do it just to oppose these maniacs, And then they of course want to expand the court. That's one thing. If they do get in power, they could do, and they could really mess up the judiciary. And I think they're trying to eliminate somehow the way they appoint judges. But I'm just saying, I think their agenda is kind of bird-brained, and they probably are getting more press than they really deserve at the moment, also. And so. But the Plattner thing, that kind of blew up on them. But they've got several other people who've gotten nominated, and they'll probably win in these far left districts because they're. But anyhow, that's kind of my statement for today, and just kind of going through the things I'm thinking about, and we'll see how that situation we've got with Iran goes, because Iran seems to be kind of a country that can take a lot of punishment, pretty much like what I said right as this thing began. That the video that came out literally the day it started, I'd recorded the night before. I said they'd be sort of like Nazi Germany was, until you actually, occupy Berlin. It doesn't end, in that case. And we're not going to occupy Tehran. We're not going to send a ground army in. So the result is they'll just keep taking punishments and probably can keep damaging ships that are fairly vulnerable. Anyway, that's all for this time. I will be posting this on YouTube and Rumble as always, and the address of my social media accounts are in the description below. All for now.